This is Daily Armenia, CivilNet's daily news digest. Here's what's making headlines in Armenia today. The allies of the jailed Russian-Armenian billionaire Samvel Karapetyan reported today that he scored a legal win against the Armenian government in an international arbitration proceeding over the planned nationalization of the country's electricity distribution network that he owns. In a Facebook post, Karapetyan's camp said that the SCC Arbitration Institute in Stockholm ordered Armenia to refrain from enforcing recent legislation that enables the state to take over electric networks of Armenia. The emergency ruling, they claimed, also blocks any further steps toward confiscating the asset. Although the group claimed victory in what they called an international court, the proceeding was in fact an emergency arbitration conducted by the SCC Arbitration Institute, which is not a court of law and does not issue judicial rulings. According to the statement, the arbitration was initiated under a 1995 investment treaty between Armenia and Cyprus, where Karapetyan's holding company is registered. The arbitrators reportedly concluded that the Armenian government's recent actions raised serious doubts about compliance with that treaty and warned that Karapetyan may not be able to recover damages if he loses control of ENA. The Armenian government quickly responded in a separate statement, clarifying that the SCC ruling was issued as part of an emergency arbitration procedure, which does not resolve the underlying dispute. It stressed that the purpose of the state's intervention is to prevent energy disruptions, protect public order, and investigate alleged corporate misconduct. While the government said it respects the interim measures imposed by foreign arbitration institutions, it added that such rulings are still subject to Armenia's domestic laws and international treaties governing their recognition and enforcement. Armenia's parliament recently passed amendments allowing state control over critical infrastructure in emergency situations, paving the way for the nationalization of ENA. Karapetyan, a Russian-Armenian billionaire, acquired ENA in 2015. His businesses have come under pressure in recent weeks, as he was put under pre-trial detention on charges of public cause to seize power. The SCC Arbitration Institute is a Sweden-based non-governmental body that resolves international commercial disputes. It does not function as a court, but can issue binding rulings under the New York Convention. Emergency arbitration is a fast-track mechanism that allows a party to request urgent relief before the main tribunal is constituted. Nearly half of Armenians, 49%, say they would vote in favor of joining the European Union if a referendum were held next Sunday, according to a nationwide survey conducted by the US International Republican Institute, published Monday. Asked about the primary motivation, most pro-EU respondents, 37%, cited improved security and stability as the main benefit of accession, a consistent trend seen in previous years. Only 18% said their main reason would be strengthening the country's economy, a figure reflecting the limited public discourse around potential economic impacts of EU membership. Instead, EU countries are often perceived as well protected and safe, even invulnerable to foreign aggression, an image that appeals to many in Armenia's current security environment. Just 5% each pointed to better prospects for democracy or easier travel to Europe. Support for EU membership, however, has dropped from 55% recorded in IRI's previous poll conducted in September 2024 when public attention was high due to the Eurovote campaign, a grassroots initiative that collected signatures calling on Armenia to apply for EU membership. That petition was later accepted by Parliament and enshrined into law in February. Opposition to EU accession rose slightly to 15% from 13%, while the share of undecided voters grew from 25% to 31%, suggesting a cooling-off period after the Eurovote campaign's initial momentum. Among those opposing EU membership, the most commonly cited reasons were concerns over the deterioration of Armenian family norms and preserving national identity, 14% each, followed by a desire to avoid angering Russia. On other foreign policy issues, 47% of respondents said they would support signing a peace treaty with Azerbaijan, while 40% were opposed. Top concerns among skeptics were potential new security risks, fears that the treaty would lead to land concessions, and the lack of trust. Azerbaijan remains the top perceived threat to Armenia, named by 87% of the respondents. However, perceptions of Turkey have shifted somewhat. While 65% still describe relations as bad, a record low, 30% now say ties with Ankara are good, a record high. When asked about Armenia's broader geopolitical alignment, 45% said the country should follow a pro-Western course, though 2/3 of that group emphasized the importance of maintaining ties with Russia. Meanwhile, 34% said Armenia should adopt a more pro-Russian policy, with most of them also favoring balanced engagement with the West. In the latest episode of the CivilNet podcast, we sat down with political analyst Tigran Grigoryan, who shared insights from his recent trip to Washington, D.C., where he met with US policymakers and experts on South Caucasus affairs. We discussed the Trump administration's proposed settlement between Armenia and Azerbaijan, including a controversial corridor plan through Sunik, as well as the deepening disconnect between the Armenian government and US diaspora organizations. The full podcast is available via the link below. And as always, please follow CivilNet for the latest news and independent reporting from our contributors on the ground here in Armenia.